Hey guys, my name's Keith.
I'm Trish, and we live in Ontario, Canada, Zone 4. Can get pretty cold here sometimes of the year. We have 3 boys, and we are transitioning our land into a food forest.
So we moved out from the suburbs to the country because we wanted to start a garden and we really wanted to grow some of our own food.
And once you start having kids, you really start thinking about what kinds of things you're putting in them. And we wanted to make sure that we are feeding them nutritional food with 0 chemicals.
So I'm a pretty extreme personality type. When I get into something, I get super into it. I'm an engineer by trade, and it was one of the things that kind of got me through engineering school. When I started doing some of the research on the industrialized food chain and seeing how devastating ecologically it is for the environment, it just stirred up this passion inside me. You know, whether it's volatilizing carbon and loss of topsoil to insect collapse, there's a whole bunch of things that we really need to change about the way we grew food. So the longer we started doing this, the more we started realizing how fundamentally this was changing every aspect of our lives. It wasn't just about gardening anymore in a sustainable, regenerative way. It was getting our family out together. The kids kind of like planting, but like they really like the harvesting. And they just talk so much to you when they're outside in the garden. There's just something disarming about nature and food and spending quality time with the family. It's just bonding, and permaculture and food forests really kind of combine it all together. My channel focuses exclusively on cold, hardy, food forest permaculture. I researched all the different plants that I could plant in Canada in Zone 4. I started realizing some of the healthiest berries on the planet and some of the healthiest foods on the planet are actually cold hardy plants. I'm also really surprised at what kind of other, warmer climate things I could grow if I just got the right varieties. So there's cold hardy varieties of a lot of things. On this property here, I have peaches, I have pawpaws, I have persimmons, I have figs. I have a lot of warm climate things and kiwis. I have kiwis that you just have to get the right variety. So this here is a Reliance Peach. And when we plant, I plant in dense polycultures, dense 3D. So we try to fill up all the 7 layers of the food forest. Overstory trees, understory trees, bushes, herbaceous layers like flowers, ground covers, root crops, and vines growing up it all. And I'll talk about why when I'm talking about maximizing photosynthesis, but that's really what we want to focus on. So we'll have peaches here, and we'll have comfrey plants as deep tap-rooted nutrient accumulators. We'll have clover around as nitrogen fixers. We have lamb's quarters and garlic as aromatic confusers for pests. Garlic mustard as aromatic confusers for pests. More comfrey. We've got strawberries as a ground cover that fills it all in. We've got garlic and onions all around. This is sea buckthorn. This is one of the healthiest berries on the entire planet, and it grows only in cold climates. And it's a nitrogen fixer. We have King Strophoria winecap mushrooms that grow and chew up our wood chips and are very delicious edible mushrooms. We have currants, which are delicious in jam. Various flowers growing in here. This is an elderberry. We have hascap bushes here. You can see how tight I cram everything because my goal is to maximize photosynthesis. Let's talk about maximizing photosynthesis for a second. About designing a food system, our goal should be to maximize as much free energy coming in, and that's solar, water, and life. So let's talk about solar. The reason why we design and why a food forest is such a regenerative system is that there's just so many solar panels out there collecting light. Now, part of the photosynthesis equation is the carbohydrate side. And what the plant actually does is takes the carbon out of the air and the sunlight, combines it to make carbon sugars. And people always talk about the carbon dioxide. But the sugars are super important because the plant sends those sugars through what's called root exudates into the soil, and that actually is like a sugary cake that feeds the bacteria, the protozoa, the nematodes, and that flourishes all the soil life. That soil life in turn makes nutrients bioavailable to the plant. So the more photosynthesis you have, the more energy you have and food going into the soil. The more soil life you have, the more plants you have, the more photosynthesis you have, the more food you have, the more soil you have. Do you see how this cycle builds and builds and builds? So this is the big thing that I hammer on my channel all the time, is we want to maximize 3D photosynthesis solar panels. We do not want to garden like a traditional gardener with lettuce, you know, every 24 inches spread out, and that's all the photosynthesis we have available to us. So we really, really want to get these vast seas of greens with all of these wonderful carpets of strawberries, hascap bushes, asparagus, peach tree, apple tree. We have goji berries, gumi berries, blueberries, raspberries. If it says berry at the end, we have it. A big part of permaculture also is moving away from annuals and moving towards perennial vegetables. It doesn't have to be done exclusively, but for example, asparagus can take the same spot of a plate as other vegetables, and you plant it once and it comes up for 25 years. These are Egyptian walking onions, and they're a perennial version of an onion that actually grows little onion bulbet sets on the top of the onion, and they'll fall over and root every single year and spread. They literally walk across your land. So you plant these once. I think I planted 5 of them, and I have hundreds of these all over my property. So annual foods you have to keep planting over and over again. Perennial foods you plant once and they keep photocopying themselves over and over again. It's actually a bit of a miracle. Second way that I collect and harvest as much energy into my system as possible is water. I need to get every raindrop that falls on my land to slow down, stop, and hold and store on my land so that it can make delicious food like these hascaps. So I use something called swales, which are trenches on contour, and that way when the rain falls, it hits these swales, slows down, spreads, and sinks below the ground and recharges and builds my aquifers. So when we combine swale and wood chips, we actually kill almost all evaporation and surface water runoff. And those are your 2 main losses of water. So that way we maximize how much water we hold in our garden systems, in our food forest. So the third area we want to maximize is life. We actually leave weeds up here because we want insects coming in. Now most gardeners will actually fence off stuff like rabbits, we'll remove insects, but we actually want to maximize the energy that they bring into our system. They have a lot of value in a garden. So instead of fencing the rabbits out, like this is a wild area here. We're in the middle of a forest and we have tons of rabbits around. When I started these gardens, they got all my lettuce, all my tomatoes, my cucumbers. They took me right down. They ate everything. So I designed this rabbit fence, a living rabbit fence. So instead now, I give the rabbits and I feed them something that they actually want to eat. And they love clover. It's one of their favorite things. And then behind the clover, I put something that they don't like to smell. So they push too far in and they hit my wall of onions and garlic. And I have dill and thyme and stuff like that in there, smelly, smelly plants. And they eat all this, they hit that smell wall, and then they say, oh, okay, I'll just keep eating all this. Now clover double benefits because it's a nitrogen fixer. So when clover gets grazed, the plant balances above ground and below ground root mass, and it sheds its roots. And in the clover roots, there's a symbiotic relationship with a mycorrhizal bacteria. And it takes nitrogen out of the air and stores it in clusters in the roots. So when the clover plant sheds those off, it becomes slow release fertilizer to everything else around it. And as well, secondly, the rabbits will actually manure and fertilize my gardens, and their compost is immediately bioavailable to plants. So now I've turned what used to be the biggest pest in my garden into a source of constant fertility into my garden. And the only cost that I have is that I have this beautiful clover wall that some people might think is messy, but to me it's beautiful. And it also has the side benefit of shading the soil so that weeds aren't as much of a problem anymore. So I almost rarely weed down here. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.